In this video, we will be discussing attachments, which are key to designing an efficient robot. Attachments are important because they make your robot useful. Even though the robot is able to move around and get you from point A to point B, it's not able to perform any tasks. And in order to do something useful with the robot, like lift an object or push an object, you need an attachment to do that for you. And attachments can either be designed to meet the specific needs of your task based on the robot design that you already have, which happens in most cases, or the robot can be designed around the attachment. So in this example, there's an arm, and the robot is designed around the arm, whereas in competitive Lego robotics, generally the attachment is designed for the robot. So there are two types of attachments mainly, which are passive and active attachments. And passive attachments do not require a motor. And that's why they're called passive attachments, because they are passively doing something. And one example is pushing a box around. So in order to push a box around, the robot just needs to ram into the object and move it around like that with the drive motors. It's not actually using a motor to push the object. And because of that, it's passive. An active attachment would require motors. So for example, when you grab a ball, something needs to surround the ball and then something needs to squeeze in order to grab the ball. And to perform a squeeze, you need a motor. And that's what makes that attachment active. Other types of attachments do exist, like pneumatic attachments or spring-based attachments, but those are a lot more complicated and I won't be discussing them in this video. So attachment design, like I said earlier, can be centered around either the robot or the task. And many times the primary question you'll ask is, will your robot perform many tasks and do you need multiple attachments to perform those tasks, or can you solve those tasks with one attachment? And another question you might ask is, does your attachment need to be in a specific place on the robot? For example, if you're pushing an object from the front, you don't want to put your attachment to push on the side of the robot because you would not be able to push from the side of the robot. You would have to either push from the front or the back. And so that could be a potential design constraint. Another thing you'd have to consider is, does your attachment fit within the design of the base robot? For example, if your base robot has no space in the front to put something to push a block, then you need to find a way to either modify your robot design to accommodate for that, or design an attachment to attach the back of the robot. And you also need to consider if any motors are needed. So that goes back to whether you have a passive or active attachment. If you have a passive attachment, then you're generally going to have fewer space constraints because you don't have a bulky motor coming with it. But if you have an active attachment, then your attachment must be attached to the motor. And that could either restrict the location that you put your attachment or the size of your attachment, because the motor is going to add size to your attachment. Lastly, there's a difference between removable and permanent attachments. So if you have a removable attachment, then the attachment itself can attach and detach from the robot. And usually in order to do this, you use gears to link the motor movement to the attachment movement in the case of active attachments. Or if you have a passive attachment that you want as a removable attachment, then you can secure it with rods or looser pins instead of using the black pins, which permanently attach two things together. For permanent attachments, generally they're directly attached to its controlling motor or the base robot, and generally permanent attachments tend to be more integrated with the overall robot design because they're permanent. The robot design is centered more around the attachment, or at least that's something that you want to take into account if you know that you're going to have a permanent attachment ahead of time. So with this, we're going to quickly discuss gears in the next video, and then we're going to create our first attachment, which will be a grabber, and begin to program some tasks for the robot.